Hi, it's Bob again with Oldawan Tools here in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and we're going to continue with the sharpening process on this knife. If you didn't watch our video yet on finding the sweet spot, you can take a look at that. And we just use that to find the angle and the location for sharpening this. So now a lot of questions we get from people concern what stone they should start with, how quickly they should move through them, those type of things. In general, since the wicked edge is built around diamond stones and they scratch so aggressively into the edge, my general rule is to start as fine as possible and only back up the coarser if you need to. So if the edge is completely gone, which this one is not in very good shape, you can see I can press my thumb on it, I can move my thumb along it, and it's not even biting into my finger. You might want to go all the way back to the 100 grit and do the repair work. If it's got chips in it, those type of things. The edges, this one shouldn't take a lot of recovery, probably like a 400 or 600 to work to bring this back. The edge is in pretty good shape. It's still, catching your finger. You can still feel that it's pretty sharp. A finer grit or even your ceramics will probably do the job. So we're going to assume, just for instructional purposes, that this knife edge is completely gone and needs some repair work, and start with a coarser grit. And I generally also start with the 200 grit, particularly when the stones are new. The diamonds will take a little while to break in when you first get them, and they're going to perform really aggressively at the start. So saving your 100 stones for when you really need them for repair work is a great thing, and letting the 200s break in and do that work when you first get your kit, and even as you work ongoing is a good practice in my mind. So what I'm going to do first would be to work both sides once I found that angle in that knife position. And the motion is a very simple up and away. So if you think about bringing the bottom of the stone to the tip of the knife as you work, is an easy motion. And your less dominant hand will take a few knives to get used to the motion where you won't have to actually stare at your hands while you're working. So once I found the angle and the knife position, I do a little work on both sides just to clean things up and get rid of any Sharpie that's left behind at this point, flatten the bevels and get it all set to go. And once I look at the edge and see that it looks pretty good that way, that the Sharpie marker is gone, I don't have any places that look like they've got divots, etc., then I start working on checking to make sure that the cutting edge is actually together, that we have a good edge. So I'm going to work on one side and then the other, and I'm going to keep my work basically even between the two sides. So what I'm going to do here is, if you picture the edge of the knife, if you've got your two bevels and you've got a flat spot at the top, right, you can polish all you want to on these two bevels, and as long as there's that flat spot, your knife is never going to get sharp. So what you want to make sure is that the bevels are meeting in space in a nice straight line. And one of the ways to do that is to raise a burr on the knife. So basically the metal is going to stretch up over the top, and you'll be able to feel it on the opposite side. And then when you work on the opposite side of the knife, you'll stretch it back the other way, and you'll be able to feel it on the opposite side you're working. So that's what I'm going to do right now, is feel for that burr coming up from the right onto the left-hand side of the knife. And you want it to be able to feel that burr all the way down the edge, from the heel to the tip. Again, if there's any spot where the two spots don't meet, you're going to end up with a dull spot there. So you want to make sure, don't want to just test it back at the back and say, I'm good to go, I can start sharpening. At this point, the edge is created. You've got to feel that burr all the way along the edge. And there's a lot of ways of feeling for the burr. For me, I like using the edge of my fingernail, the very tip of it, and I just drag it up the knife from the spine towards the cutting edge, and I can feel that metal dragging across the fibers of my fingernail. So I've got a burr coming up on this side pretty nicely all the way along the edge. So I'll do the same amount of work on the opposite side of the knife. Again, creating that burr. And there's a variety of motions you can use in this phase, depending on how much work you're having to do, how much repair the knife needs, etc. With the wicked edge, you can do all leading edge strokes, so down in if you prefer. To the knife, you can do circles as you're doing this work. You can scrub like I was doing. You can do parallel to the cutting edge and then scrubbing, which will remove metal a lot faster because you're creating like a crosshatch pattern to remove the steel. And I'm just going to work back on the right to even up my work again. back. And feel for this burr. And you want the burr to come up from both sides of the knife, so both from the right and from the left, and you need to be able to feel it along the full length. And once I've got that burr along both sides, I'm pretty confident that the metal has come together, creating that cutting edge. What I do is just a few strokes at the same grit that I'm working with. Just to take that off. And now you should be able to feel this edge, and even at a coarse grit like 200, you should feel that it's sharp. You can do that with the tip of your finger, the pad of your finger. You can do it with your fingernail. It'll bite right into your fingernail. And it should be sharp at this point. If you're not sharp at this point, then again, you can continue to polish and work up through the grits. And there's a slight chance you'll end up with a sharp knife at the end, but chances are not good. So really get that burr from both sides, feel the cutting edge here for it to be sharp, and then you can start progressing through the grits. So when do you change grits and move up? It's much like sandpaper. You know, the grits start with the smaller number and get larger, and as you get finer and finer, you're putting in finer scratches, and you want to be able to feel the edge getting smoother. So if your goal is strictly to get the knife sharp, and you don't have a lot of concern about the appearance, that is the mirror image or the mirror reflectiveness of the bevel or something like that, then really it's just a matter of working with each progressive grit, and the sound will get quieter as you go, and the knife edge will get smoother. And I'm not applying any pressure against the knife edge at this point. It's really just the stone leaning, and I'm just lifting the knife, or lifting the stone across the knife. So, even things back up. So very light pressure. Once you've got the edge built in, you can use a little more pressure to help remove the steel. You can also vary your scratch patterns. I find when I work, I tend to miss this very back portion of the knife, trying to miss the ricasso with the stones. I end up not sharpening that. And so I try to do some leading edge strokes coming from the back to the tip so that I'm sure to get back there on that. Another tip for you is some people will notice that they're getting some rounding or some faceting on the tip of the knife. And what that usually comes from is as you get out to the tip, the stone actually wants to twist and come off the bevel and kind of roll around the end of the knife. So they'll flatten it or they'll get a faceting that they see. And what I do to prevent that is I use just the slightest amount of back pressure with my thumb as I get close so that the stone stays in good contact with the bevel on both sides. If you do get that, you can remove it pretty quickly by actually doing just some leading edge strokes coming into the knife from the front. And that'll get rid of that faceting, really quickly for you. Another thing that a lot of people do when they first start with the system is they'll push all the way out and come across off the tip of the knife. And this is a pretty dangerous spot to be in. As you come back, it's very easy to run your thumb into the tip of the knife and cut yourself. It's also easy to get distracted when you're doing that and bring yourself into the tip of the knife. So the stone only has to come part way down the tip and you can lift it away. You don't have to come all the way off the tip. You've already covered it all. And this feels nice and smooth and even to me at this point. And so I would go ahead and switch up to the 600 grit by rotating the stone around on the handle. And I'm all set to go. Your strokes also don't have to cover the full length of the blade at once. You can do partial strokes and just overlap them, working your way down the blade. If that's more comfortable for you. It's easy to do. If you're going for a real mirror polish, then the key is you've got to remove the scratches from the previous grit with the next grit you go to. So with the diamonds, that takes quite a bit of work because they do scratch so aggressively into the knife and they put in deep scratches. So you've got to do more work than just getting it smooth. And magnification is a great way to check that. Using a little pocket magnifier or a USB microscope so you can look at the cutting edge and see the scratches that you're putting in. And a lot of folks will do actually scratches at right angles to each other so they can tell when they removed all the previous scratches. So they'll do one set going from heel to tip, and then they'll do the next tip going the opposite way. So the scratches are actually crossing each other. So this scratch pattern is going this way, and then the next one is going this way. And then when you look at it through the magnifier, you can see the most current grit. Another thing that'll happen though while you're going for a mirror finish is you'll actually just stretch the metal over and cover up some of those scratches. And as you get to your final grits, you'll start to uncover them as the metal thins. So they'll expose themselves and you'll think that at your strops you're putting in deep scratches, and what's usually happening is you're uncovering the work before. So you just need to back up in your grits again, do a coarser and work your way back up. You just haven't spent quite enough time. So now we're moving on to the 800 and 1000. And again, it's just that same pattern. I like the up and away stroke. Again, you can do a leading edge stroke as opposed to the trailing edge like this. This is nice because if the phone rings or something happens and you get distracted and you look away, your hand isn't moving towards the cutting edge. You don't have any problems with that. So. And then on to 1000. And again, just till the sound sounds nice and even. So it doesn't seem like it's getting quieter and it feels nice and smooth. Great. So by my book, I would call that pretty good. The edge has got a nice little bite to it on my finger at this point. You could continue on with strops. That's going to give it, again, a little more shine to the edge. It's going to refine this edge a little more and help it bite. Some people like their edges a little more toothy. Some like them smoother. So I hope that a couple suggestions on technique there will help you out with using your Wicked Edge or getting started with it. And if you've got any questions, feel free to give us a call. We're always available, or send us an email. You can find that information on our website, www.oldawan.com.